Hello, and welcome to our cross-cultural management training. If you're here, it's because you've been selected to be a part of the team that's going to go and lead our company's new operations in the Philippines. As a part of this selection, you would have already received general direction on the differences between the culture in the United States and the Philippines. The purpose of this video is to give you more information on the differences of management expectations between the United States and the Philippines. In order to do this, the primary model that we're going to be using is the GLOBE leadership model. So what is GLOBE? GLOBE is the Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness Project. This project conducts general leadership and organizational behavior around the world. It was originally founded by Robert J. House, and the research now includes results from 200 researchers in 62 countries. GLOBE has published 3 books as well as hundreds of articles related to their findings. Their leadership scales will help you prepare for success as a manager heading into the Filipino culture. Just as GLOBE's work on general culture was used to help you understand the differences in the country you're going into, we're going to use their leadership scales to help determine how you can be as successful as possible working for the company in this new location. Looking at their leadership scale, GLOBE has ranked leaders from each country on 6 different scales. These six scales are charismatic, team-oriented, participative, humane-oriented, autonomous, and self-protective. From these scales, looking at each country's individual scores, you can begin to get an expectation for what leadership looks like within that country. Additionally, you can get an understanding of what employees expect to see from leadership within that country. Comparing the U.S. results with those of the scores from the Philippines, we can begin to see how we would need to prepare to lead within this different culture. Going more in depth on these 6 particular traits, we'll begin with charismatic. The charismatic score shows us the degree to which followers value charisma and vision in their leaders. The higher the score, the more vision and charisma and personality that employees within that country will expect their leader to have. Next, we have team-oriented. This gives us a picture of whether team or individually oriented actions should be more valued by leadership. In places with a higher score, there's a higher expectation that leadership will make more team-oriented decisions. Participative. This trait shows us how involved a manager is expected to be in employee decision-making. Again, the higher the score, the higher the expectation that managers will participate in more decisions. For humane-oriented, this looks at how compassionate, supportive, and generous workers expect their leaders to be. The higher the humane-oriented score, the greater the expectation that managers will put more emphasis on taking care of their employees, not just on being their leader or manager. For autonomous, this tests the level to which workers expect to be given autonomy over how their role is executed. Finally, self-protective is the expectations that actions will be taken in the interest of self-protection. Here is a look at how this model matched up for both the United States and the Philippines. Looking at these graphs, the triangle within each trait shows the score for that specific country for that specific metric. The entire shaded area shows the full range of scores in that area for all countries that GLOBE has a value for, and then the additional line shows the average score for that specific trait. Taking some time to review both of these, you'd be able to find that there are 2 specific areas that have a high degree of difference between the U.S. and Filipino scores. These 2 areas are participative and humane orientation. Because of the larger differences here, we can expect that these areas will have the greatest impact on workers' expectations of you as you go into the Philippines as a manager. Our similarities and the other 4 areas will give you a great common ground on which you can base many of your management actions and decisions to help bridge this culture gap. Now we're going to take a practical review and look more into 3 specific areas. The first being communication, second being motivation, third being teamwork. What can we deduce from the Globe scores about these 3 areas and how it will affect our decision making as managers in the Philippines? First is communication. The primary trait that will impact communication will be the fact that the participative scores were higher in the US than in the Philippines. Because of this, we can know that workers in the Philippines will expect greater manager involvement in decision makings. To account for this, be prepared to provide greater context for your teams in regards to important decisions. Additionally, be prepared for your teams to reach out with questions on decisions which you may expect your American teams to make alone. In this regard, keep in mind that because of the cultural difference, a team member asking for additional help on a decision is not a display of their incompetence or inability to find the answer, but rather just their cultural disposition towards referring to you in that kind of situation. So be prepared for questions that you may not normally get, and you should be able to bridge this gap just fine. Second, moving on to motivation. The primary trait that will impact this area will be humane orientation, the scores for which were much higher in the Philippines. Because of this, we can know that managers are expected to show much more compassion and support for team members in the Philippines. Because of this, a lack of compassion from management could be demotivating for your team members. Decisions are less expected to be made simply for the facts or numbers involved, but also to take into account how one could care for their employees. Making sure that you care for your employees is a great way of ensuring that they stay motivated. Another factor that may go into play for motivation is that there are similar scores in charisma between the US and the Philippines. This shows us that managers who are strong and showing motivational vision can expect similar results between both countries. The final area that we are looking at is teamwork. This is the area that should be the most similar between the United States and the Philippines. A very close team orientation and autonomous score imply similarities here in team responses based on work activities or groups. You can expect a similar response to employee willingness to work in groups in the Philippines that you see in the United States. The increase in participation score may also lead to more Filipino teams being expected to include the manager for decisions. This goes back to our communication area where we talked more about this. You can expect your teams to additionally come back to you and relay their team answers to you for a general manage-based decision. Since this area is so similar, the company does employ the same team structure in the Philippines that we use here in the United States. That should give you a great overview of the Globe leadership model, the 6 traits that it uses, and how it can affect our company, communication, motivation, and teamwork as you move into the Philippines.